I've always wanted to build a spaceship in the style of those old 1970s books by Stewart Cowley. Those things were amazing, pages of ships that looked like they were designed by someone who just raided a scrapyard and then said, yeah, that'll fly. I love to find those books again one day, but until then, it's long nights trawling the internet for grainy scans of half-remembered images, kind of like space archaeology, only with more coffee and less actual danger. So, this is it, the very first build in my new Reimagined series. We're kicking things off with a spaceship, built to the absolute best of my current ability, which basically means I used every tool, trick, and scrap of plastic I had lying around. If you've been here a while, you know I love scratch building, and this one's no exception. The goal? To get as close as I can to those wonderfully gritty ships from the Cowley books. Now, I'll admit it, in the future, I'd love to have a 3D printer and maybe even one of those fancy vacuum formers you see here in the arsenal. Both will be game changers for builds like this, but for now, it's just me, my workbench, and a pile of parts that probably once belonged to at least 3 different household appliances, or several models. This is actually a build I've covered before. In fact, there are 2 videos about it sitting comfortably in my playlist. So, if you feel like going on an archive dig, they're there. But this time, I decided to rip it apart and rework it into something completely different. Why? Well, blame Friulmodel. I was endlessly fiddling with those tracks for my Carro Armato build, and at some point boredom struck so hard I needed a break. Next thing I knew, I started to abandon the tank and found myself elbow deep in spaceship parts. Using a fresh batch of Greeblies, plus bits of rod and styrene strip, I started adding more detail to the ship, and when I say more, I mean way more. I'd spend countless hours gluing on tiny pieces, then staring at them like some kind of space mechanic, before realizing I was actually starting to miss my Friulmodel tracks. Yeah, it got that bad. Oh, and this tool right here, made by a company called Adele, is something I first spotted on Adam Savage's channel. Naturally, I had to go full internet detective, track one down on eBay, and make it mine. It's used for making those little notches you see sprinkled all over this build, and they're also on the Star Wars builds if you look closely enough. Honestly, it's one of the coolest tools I own, and probably the only one in my arsenal that makes people go, wait, what is that thing? It's a really cool tool. See if you can find one, but you gotta find one that's fairly new. And I believe it was used for, I don't know what it's used for, but it's used for making ships now. Honestly, this is something I didn't think about when I first built this ship. And it's one of those details that really needed to be added. What are they, you ask? To the viewer's eye, they're probably little windows to gaze at the passing stars. Romantic, right? But if I were actually on this ship, well, let's just say I'd be stuck somewhere deep in the bowels of the thing, staring at the same piece of Greebly for days and wondering if it'll ever move. Not exactly the scenic view you imagine when you think of space travel. I may have, definitely added too many of them at first, but then I thought, well, this is the main area of the ship. It would be heavily populated, just not by me, of course, because I'm stuck down in the bow somewhere, remember? So, as I moved further back along the ship, my thinking was fewer windows, fewer details, and fewer cuts I had to make with styrene, until I eventually got to the engine section. That's where things get interesting again. A little chaos, a little mechanical madness, just enough to make you wonder if this ship can actually fly without falling apart. Okay, it definitely doesn't have those beautiful flowing curves you see in those Cowley photos, and the one thing that does come to mind is boxy but good. That's from an old movie. If you can tell me what movie that's from, put it in the comments. But hey, one day. For now, I'm just happy to have actually finished the thing. Getting here took forever. I even tried using some other random plastic bits, stuff like shampoo bottles and who knows what else. But apparently, CA glue and I have some unresolved issues. Let's just say getting those parts to stick was a challenge. Frustrating hair-pulling challenge. Why is this not working kind of challenge? I know I can use baking soda and all that stuff and accelerators, but I don't know what's wrong with me. I can never use CA glue, but I am getting better. And these are the engines. Those are from plastic bits, from some sort of drink. Yakult drinks? I don't really know, but my son loves them, and I love getting engines from them. Seriously, those little bottles make some really nice shapes for spaceship bits. That's where these engines are going to sit on the model. Originally, this was going to be a freighter. I even grabbed some HO scale trailers to use as cargo containers. But well, they look way out of scale, so obviously that idea got abandoned pretty quickly. Well, not quickly, it took months. Which means, of course, I needed to add some more Greeblies, because apparently there's no such thing as too many tiny spaceship details. A keen eye will probably notice where most of these Greeblies came from. Yep, I'm putting you all to the test. Let's see how good you are. Drop your guesses in the comments. I managed to pick up a big bundle of parts that are just perfect for spaceship builds. Honestly, it felt like Christmas morning, but instead of toys, it was tiny plastic bits destined to make my ship look like it survived 100 light years of chaos. Boxy, but good. Well, good in the sense that it would probably fall apart on its maiden flight in hyperspace. Or at Warp 7 if you're a Trekkie. Hold on. I'm not sure I want to warp into that universe just yet. I mean, I enjoy the show, but with my luck, I'd end up as the guy in the red shirt who doesn't even make it past the opening credits. So, all that's left is to add a few more bits, maybe sprinkle in some extra Greeblies, and honestly, those Friulmodel tracks are looking better and better. Don't worry, I'm still working on the Carro Armato too. This isn't me going off track or abandoning it, just taking a little detour for some spaceship therapy. A tiny plastic-fueled vacation before I dive back into the tank land. So, if you come here just for this kind of spaceship content, fair warning, most of the time I'm still deep in the 135 scale world. That said, I do plan on more reimagined builds in the future. The Ghost Tank, for example, is still mostly in the planning stages, mostly just figuring out the color scheme and how I'm going to slap it on without making a mess. Or make sense. I'd love to have you along for the ride. You can help support future builds just by hanging out, watching, and maybe hitting that subscribe button. Honestly, your eyeballs are the fuel that keeps these tiny plastic adventures going. How am I even going to paint and weather this thing? I mean the scale. I don't even know, 1 in 100,000th? Something tiny like that, this is completely new territory for me. The plan is to get it into primer first, and yes, you should be seeing that in the thumbnail. If not, well, clearly I didn't manage to get it primed yet. Or maybe Photoshop. I can't afford Photoshop, I use Canva. Save me from admitting I forgot. Either way, primer is the first step onto the brave, tiny space adventure journey of my boxy but good spaceship. I am really happy with how this came out. A finished, well, unpainted, and hopefully primed spaceship. Not too shabby, right? And the addition of all those little windows, I think really made the ship, and it would be really cool if I can get them lighted, but maybe next time. And this little ship is about to embark on its maiden voyage, and I hope you'll join me to see where it goes. Until then, a huge thank you to all my subscribers for supporting the channel. You're the reason these tiny plastic adventures keep happening. Until then, we will get back on solid ground with the Carro Armato. Yeah, I really like how that came out, and it's gonna look awesome painted. Yeah. Alright, until then, I will see you in the next video. See you later.